What's that? Howls from the woods, movement under the water, something you notice out of the corner of your eye, but when you look it's gone. This is Cryptid Talk. Hello everyone! How is everyone doing today? I hope everyone had a good week, and honestly, I am very excited and looking forward to this week's episode. Before we get into that, to the to everyone who came to the festival last week, and I got a lot of new subscribers from then. Met some really nice people, and as soon as I put my little costume on, I had people lined up for it. So let's actually go back a little bit. So, but to all the new subscribers and everything, thank you and welcome. I'm glad able to got some people who are really interested in it and who are interested in the podcast, and it will come from here. So I'll give a quick little run through of how the festival went. Festival started off really good, nice and a little slow and everything, and then got a few subscribers here and there, and then all of a sudden, I decided, what, I'm gonna go put my costume on, got my hat, and put on the Cryptid Talk shirt, and the moment I put on the costume, I had people wanting to get pictures with me. I had people I had one people taking pictures with some. There were people behind them waiting for more. I had all these people taking pictures, and it was just a good old fun time, and everyone just wanted to keep taking pictures and everything. It was fun, and got a bunch of new subscribers. Unfortunately, wasn't able to talk to too many people. There we go. Too many people about like any of their experiences they had. They had some. A handful or so people I was able to ask, and the only one that gave me an answer. Well, there were two. I got two answers. One was from a person who said he saw one. I think I left a note of it in here. No, that was the other thing. That he saw one. He saw like a Mister or like a some sort of like smoke, like a Mister Smoke that had some like sort of like weird shape into it. The other one, which was interesting nonetheless. Let's see if I can find the book. No, I'm not gonna try. But in the Pacific Northwest, they were driving somewhere and they clearly saw a stump. But when they came back in the exact same spot where they drove past earlier, coming back from where they came from, the stump was not there. And the person said that they were driving through the redwood forests. So it wasn't a super duper huge tree, but they're driving through big trees nonetheless. And the stump was just gone. So like, so obviously nothing definitive, but at least definitely to make them go, huh? That stump was there, but it's not there anymore. Was that what I think it is? So hard to say, but if you are listening to this now and you became a subscriber when I was wearing a costume and really have a chance to talk, if you've seen something, email me or know someone that has, or you have a picture or video of anything. It necessarily doesn't even have to be about Bigfoot. It could literally be any sort of cryptid-like thing. Email me at cryptidtalk91@aol.com. Email me there, and if you have stories and you didn't get a chance to talk about it, I would love to hear about them. And then if you know anyone that has too, because obviously the one thing that people say is, they don't share a lot of times share stories with people because they know the scrutiny they're going to get from it or something along those lines, and which is unfortunate. The amount of times that people have been nervous or scared to tell people about something that they've seen, and their fear of either losing their jobs or in some cases, depending what you do, even they're worrying their lives. And it's kind of that is rather unfortunate because for most people, when they've seen these things, they didn't plan to see them. They just happened. They're just in the to some people, you could say at the right place at the wrong time. It's the right place at the right time, but some people say the wrong place at the wrong time, kind of thing. So if you are one of those people that send them my way. I would love to hear some more stories. It could be long, it could be short. I do not care. I would just love to hear it. And it was so nice meeting so many people too that were interested in the podcast once I actually like, oh yeah, you're like, what do you think? And then they then got interested in everything like that. So now this is your first episode after the festival. The festival's a lot of fun. Possibly met someone I might have as a future guest, so that'd be pretty cool. And it was just just a fun festival, and they've already announced the festival for next year of August 9th, I believe. August 9th. Yep. So, just like Cryptid Talk will be there next year. So, stay tuned. I got some ideas already up for product for next year, and some of these ideas came up with while we were just literally just there at the booth. So, stay tuned for next year. Sorry about that. All right, so now that we got the festival talk and everything out of the way, today's episode, what is it? Well, obviously at this point, if you've already, clicked the video, you already saw the title of it already, but today's episode is actually one I wasn't going to do yet. I was going to save it for, I don't know, another time. But apparently just recently, I think within the past day or two, there was actually a day for it. There's like a day for everything. Like, oh, tomorrow's a National Cheese Day, yada yada, blah blah, or something like that. And so, this week's episode. Ooh, I'm in the wrong page. This week's episode is pretty much about sea monsters and our sea serpents. So we're talking about like sea monsters today and everything. And I'm very looking forward to this one. Surprisingly enough, it was one of those things. I'm like, I'm surprised I haven't done anything sea monster or sea serpent yet. Which I would say probably the closest thing we probably have done to that so far would probably be missing some pages here. Would probably be Nessie. That'd be the closest thing we probably have done to anything water-like so far. But now we're going to another good one, another good one, another fun one to do here. So, sea monsters, sea serpents. Probably, like, I would honestly say probably the oldest stories of cryptids today. I mean, I don't think there's any records of like any sort of cryptid or monster of anything that goes farther back than sea monsters, at least recorded wise, for sure. I mean, looking into some more stuff for this, I saw that they had reports of sea monsters after like 6 AD, I believe, and they're just like really early on. And obviously, then they have like the 12, and then like pretty much ever since man has traveled to the ocean, traveling to other places, stories of creatures bigger or the size of boats, crushing them, devouring the men on board. Like, sea monsters have inspired so much into modern day society. The 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the Beast of 20,000 Fathoms, Godzilla, like release the Kraken. Like, there are so many things that have been that have come from it, because there's just so many stories that you just can't ignore all the stories. Now, we will get into today that there's a chance that some of these stories were probably misidentifications of certain things, or not understanding everything of the ocean yet, especially in like early times of excuse me, that bacon was good. Sorry, I had we had a breakfast breakfast for dinner, so we had some bacon and eggs and toast. Very good. All right, you know what? Put in the comments below, what is your favorite? How is your favorite way you like having your eggs prepared? And then how brown or dark do you like your toast? Put in the comments below. I'm curious to see what people say. I am more of a scrambled egg kind of person, and lightly toasted toast, or at least with a little bit of brown, but nothing too much where it gets too crunchy. I like that. I like that the difference between soft and crunchy toast. But that's just me. Anywho, wrong page. So yeah, so stories of sea monsters have been going on for forever. Since man has traveled out to the ocean, sailors would come back of stories of these creatures that would, crush boats, devour men, and just stories that just seemed unbelievable. Now, especially like before I got into the whole breakfast discussion, when it comes to early discovery, when man has started to travel to areas that it's not used to, or brand new areas, untouched territory for them, and then they start seeing things that they just don't understand, or things that might be completely natural, but then all of a sudden, they're seeing like this thing of to us it seems natural, like, well, duh, of course it's just a bunch of seaweed or something like that. But to them, people seeing this first time, they're like, what is that? Is that some sort of crazy monster? Let me make sure that's still right. Yep. Okay. It's like some sort of crazy monster. Like, what is that? And then obviously they come back if they survive the story and everything like that. They'd come back and tell stories of these creatures it was like 3 times bigger than the boat, and thankfully we got away from it before it crushed us. Or this is what they stories of the actual like people losing men, ships being destroyed, and stuff like that. So there definitely are some stories that probably were. Sorry, gotta readjust. I can't sit like that forever. Probably had some sort of actual, interactions with some probably real animals, some, and then probably some that were not real. But I mean, hey, that's the whole thing of with just discovery and just learning about things in general. You're gonna get things wrong for a bit. So, what are some prime examples of some pretty well-known sea monsters? There's a lot. There's probably one of my favorite arcade games is a game called Ocean Hunters. One of my oldest memory games that is still on the Ocean City Boardwalk today. And whenever I go, I bring a lot of quarters, and I pretty much go until I beat the game. Every single time I go down to the beach, I'm like, all right, I gotta play it once, play the whole way through, and everything like that. I love that game. Another thing, I keep forgetting to look into, like, because some of the bosses in those games I have heard before, and some of them I'm like, huh, I'm gonna look into some of these later. See, there's actually a bit like there's something more like behind some of these. Because some of these, a lot of these are kind of are based off of real legends and stuff like that. But anywho, that's something for another fun time, like a little bonus episode. Like, let's talk about the monsters from Ocean Hunters and stuff like that. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know. So some of the well-known sea monsters are, the Kraken, the giant squid, Megalodon. Of course, you got like the Leviathan, and like sea serpents. Those are some of like the most well-known sea monsters that when people hear stories of. That's what they normally seem to gravitate to. But now there's obviously there's always those stories of these that are more than just that. Like, if you've ever looked at old Norse mythology books and just maps, and there's old maps of just the ocean and everything like that, there's always like these weird creatures that are drawn amongst the map, showing the thinking that, or showing, hey, these are the creatures that I know that people have seen, and they're drawing on the maps of like, ooh, if you go through these waters, you will see these creatures and stuff like that. And some of them are these crazy looking things that, like, what did you see to think that saw that and everything? And again, it goes back to that whole thing of people seeing things that they don't truly understand. And so that's just going to happen if people have seeing all, so when they're things are still new and stuff like that. Oh, wait, let's see. But of course, we won't go fully in depth into all of these creatures, because I do plan on having the Kraken, Kraken, giant squid, giant octopus as their own episode. Same with Megalodon, because there's a lot around them and stuff like that, and as always, I'd always kind of be, I want to save those for a future time. But we'll kind of briefly go over them and everything else like that. So the first one on our list is, I mentioned, the Kraken, probably one of the longest known giant sea monsters. The giant octopus that can crush ships and devour all the men on board and everything. And sorry, and then kind of this whole thing where where they and they have these long tentacles and everything. And people have always, if you ever seen like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, they have the Kraken that they have there, and they have this epic battle near the end of the movie, and we're able to fight it off to a point, but then ultimately did have to lose the ship for it. But the Kraken always been described as like a huge creature, the size of like bigger than the boat, and can crush it without any problems at all whatsoever. And so that one's always been interesting, because there are even to this day still stories of the Kraken, of at least nothing of that exact size, but something of similar size to it at least, but still bigger than normal giant octopus for sure. Same thing goes with the giant squid. That's been a cryptid for a very, very long time with stories, until they started washing up on shores, being found in the bodies of sperm whales, and then of course all the other stories of them, people like seeing them and everything. And then of course we had the live one captured in picture, and then the tentacle, and then all the other stuff. If you've ever been keeping track of all that stuff, all the recent discoveries that have been made with that in the past 15 20 years. So yeah, I think we made a little longer than that, but I think at least 20 years. The amount of stuff that we've learned from giant squid, and just from learning about the crazy stuff that is in the bottom of the ocean. So the next one is Megalodon. Megalodon is, and it is known, is a known prehistoric shark that lived back in the time of the dinosaurs. It was the biggest shark ever in the world. I believe getting up to at least 60 to 80 feet, and that could eat a great white like a sardine. It wouldn't be able to stand to that. But now we have the smaller, more modern day cousin of relative of Megalodon, the great white shark. And like most sharks, if you actually didn't know this, the only bone in a shark are its jaws and teeth. Everything else is cartilage. So that's why there are no skeletons of sharks. The only thing we have of them are their jaws and their teeth. So if you ever wonder about that, that's there's the answer to that. And yeah, even till today, there are stories of people saying that they've seen Megalodon, or a way bigger than normal shark than there really should. And are some of these people seeing these things? Possibly. I mean, it could just be a misidentification thing. I mean, there have been some pretty big great white sharks that have been seen in the past, just in the past years, and and like some of them have all been like these females that are about to be giving birth, and they're just so big and everything like that. And apparently, I actually just found out from this year's Shark Week that female great whites, they possibly have a pack of some sort, and the big female is like the leader of it. So they're kind of like the matriarch of it, like with elephants. The matriarch is the main leader of it all. So I don't know. I actually found that pretty interesting, and I actually had no idea about that. Okay, you're behaving. And so yeah, so Megalodon, again, I won't go too deep into it, because that is something I do want to cover in a future episode. The next one, So then this one has had so many different shapes and sizes and so many sources of media that it's been in, and that's the Leviathan. A lot of times, the Leviathan has been described as a giant whale, just a big hulking mass creature, or if you ever seen the Disney film Atlantis, the Leviathan crab creature thing, lobster thing that they have, that they call that the Leviathan. It has so many it has so many different looks to it, so it's really kind of hard to tell. Like when I, cause honestly, when I think to myself now, like Leviathan, when I hear the word Leviathan, like what do I think it is? I'm not sure. I think out of a lot of things, I've always feel like Leviathan to me is probably more of like a supersized whale. But there have been some people that said the Leviathan is actually more of like some sort of like sea serpent like thing, or just a big hulking mass creature. And I don't know, but I think a giant whale would I be if I had Leviathan in my head. That's the direction that I would go. And so there's always stories like that. But of course, stories of people go in the ocean and then seeing sperm whales, which is I think is the more defining, more the when the people have described it in the more of the whale route, have always described it as looking more like a sperm whale or something similar to it, which I think a lot of these stories of the Leviathan actually were more of like a probably were just sperm whales that they're seeing for the first time. And sperm whales can get pretty big, nothing like monstrous size like in like Moby Dick and stuff like that, but still big nonetheless. And one of the actually probably one of the only real few predators of the giant squid. Because if you've ever seen pictures of of sperm whales that either washed up on shore or they seem swimming around, they have these big circles all around their mouths and their heads, showing that those are the suction cups of giant squid that they've been hunting. And some of these circles on this thing are big. Some of these are really big. Some of these, like the biggest possible giant squid, or at least a giant squid-like cousin species that we've seen that people believe we've gotten on video so far, was by Monster Quest. That they caught a Humboldt squid in the Sea of Cortez, which is just in Mexico, and they went. I think it went down around like 1,500 feet, maybe 2,000, and they got a shot of a very big squid, like very big, and you couldn't even see the full thing of it. All you see was like this big opening of tentacles, the possible reflection of the eye, and after doing some measurements of going from the center of it to the eye and yada 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 blah, they believe the squid that they saw was possibly 60 feet or 60 to 80 feet long, more or less in a 60 feet range. That's ridiculous. A squid-like species that's that big. Now, whether or not that was a giant squid or some other another, relative to it, it's hard to say. Because also in the recent years they discovered, the colossal squid. It may not be as long, but it's thicker and it's a lot heavier. And then there's the video of them catching the colossal squid and everything. And it is just fascinating. And so who knows? So that's always been very interesting, and hopefully, we see more of that. Now, obviously, the probably minus like the Kraken and everything else like that, the most common sea monster that a lot of people I feel like there are stories of something like it on in almost every ocean in the world. There's like a sea monster in almost every ocean in the world, or if not, if any, in every, is the sea serpent. The most common form of a ship going along, and this long neck creature comes up out of the water, snatches people, and dives back down, and stories of all that. And a lot of times they've always described them as these long long serpentine-like creature with a long body, able to get their head out of the water and either attack the boat or attack the people on it. Some people even describe sea monsters as being more like a Nessie kind of like thing, like the plesiosaur like thing with a body with a long neck and a little head that comes at the end of it. There were some stories of people said that I think in like the early 1800s, even before the whole thing with Loch Ness really blew up, was that people would were saying they were seeing like these creatures like this with a neck that comes out, the head at the end of it, and that they're all dumbfounded. And so then that kind of, and again, stories like that even come to this day. So now that wonder makes you the whole thing of like, I like is Nessie possibly some of these sea monsters that people see in different parts of the world? Because there are certain sea monsters that people see in this one ocean that, excuse me, are pretty much identical to Nessie. So, excuse me. So there must be some sort of possible connection to it, like the whole one theory that there are caves underneath Loch Ness that could possibly connect the ocean to the loch, and that's how Nessie's able to skedaddle out there from time to time, and that's when there's there's no sightings of Nessie for a period of time. There is nothing, and all of a sudden sightings just pop back up again, and then people start reporting like blam 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 blam. And so, and again, like, who really knows? I mean, so sea serpents though have always been interesting because again, a lot of times they haven't been like these things that they've reeled up out of the water and stuff like that. A lot of times they're more just like a snake in a way and just swim like it's serpentine. But probably, yeah, hair in my mouth. Probably one of the most well-known sea serpent sightings, and this you may have. Okay, here's the story. Here it is, right here. So you may have heard of this story. It's probably one of the most well-known sea serpent stories of all time, and it's also one of the most mysterious ones of all time, just on how the whole end result of it and everything like that. And and if you already know I'm talking about this, I am talking about the wait, hold on, what is it? The Pensacola, the Pensacola sea serpent. And so you know what? Here, instead of me kind of giving like a quick little synapse of the story, I'm gonna read this little thing that pretty much describes the story after the fact, because yeah. So if you haven't heard before, I won't spoil anything yet until I read now. Here is the story: the Pensacola sea monster. It began on the morning of the 24th, March 1962, when Edward, along with Eric, Warren, Brad, and Larry, set out to go diving at the wreck of the Massachusetts, several miles off the coast of Pensacola. As they rowed out on their 7-foot Air Force little life raft, they found the tide was stronger than they had anticipated. Storm clouds have begun to gather, and the boys decided to turn back. Several of them swam behind the raft and pushed it. As the waves grew higher, swamping the raft, they swam to a 20-foot buoy and clambered onto its metal scaffolding. In the violence of the storm that followed the raft was sucked under, and the buoy rocked by lashing winds and icy rain. Finally, the maelstrom passed, and a fog rolled in, as the sea became millpool calm. That's how they described it. A foul smell akin to dead fish filled the air. A strange whining cry echoed through the dark. Then something as long as a telephone pole reared up out of the water and plunged back in. The boys panicked and jumped off the raft and began. Behind them, they heard hissing and splashing. Suddenly, Warren yelled out, "Help me! It's got Brad! It's got Brad!" Warren cries were abruptly cut short. The three remaining boys huddled together and tried to swim for shore. Then something grabbed Larry from below and dragged him under. Eric was becoming exhausted, and Edward tried to help him stay afloat, but the sea, now turning choppy again, pulled them apart. Then a monstrous reptilian beast reared up from the deep. It was like a snake-like neck, gleaming green eyes, and a gaping maw that fell down on Eric and dragged him under. Swimming for his life and expecting to feel the sea dragon's teeth in his flesh at any moment, Edward became exhausted and felt the tranquility of death take over him. He recalled nothing further until he was in the hospital. Unsurprisingly, he suffered a breakdown afterwards. The police decided it would be better for them that they all kept the sea dragon out of their official report. But E. McGovern said to Edward, "The sea has a lot of secrets, and there are a lot of things we don't know about. People don't believe in these things because they are afraid to. Yes, I believe you, but there's not much else I can do." Sequentially, unfortunately, Edward suffered from a breakdown. Apparently, he still lives in the area today, but refuses to talk about the awful events that befell him and his friends on that fateful day. Okay, and then they talk about a bunch of other ones, which there is one part of the. Oh, I always love these things. There is one part of the story that they didn't mention. So, hold on, making sure I don't delete the wrong thing. There we go. There are stories of when they, because I can't I don't want to go spending looking for it right now kind of thing, but this whole story of me reading it made it sound like it went by pretty quick. Apparently, though, the story actually took place over a little bit, like a little bit of time, maybe like 30 minutes to an hour or so. And they had actually swam a decent amount of miles before the ending of the story happened. I can't remember the exact number offhand, and I tried looking for it earlier, but this is the first one I was actually able to explain that said actually like a decent amount of story. But I'm just gonna make up a number just for the hell of it, just so we can you get the point across. I think in total they swam like 9 to 10 miles or so. It was a decent amount of miles, but in the actual story of this of the report in the newspapers of the story, they actually said that the newspapers said they only swam about 2 miles. Now, obviously, they were trying to keep this story, under check, making sure they're not telling people like, oh, there's a sea monster out there. But then I do remember hearing that the one survivor was curious on why they would shorten the distance that they had all swam. Why not just keep it the original distance? Because there are a lot of stories like this where something major happened, where a cryptid or a creature of some sort did a lot of damage or took lives, and they obviously chalked up as being, oh, a crazed bear attacked some campers, or something along those lines, trying to throw it off as it not being anything as dangerous as it was. But in this case, I understand, if they were going to remove the whole thing that the boys just unfortunately drowned in rough sea weather. But why shorten the distance of its swim so greatly? It's very interesting. And when I first heard about the story, I was on some TV special about it. I was even thinking like, yeah, why even reduce the time like that? Because I was thinking like, there's nothing more or less you can gain from it being like, okay, they swam this amount of time. It actually would make sense. Or was it the other way around? God, yeah, and I really can't remember. Part of me even feels like they even increased the time, but they actually didn't swim as far. Maybe it was that, because then it would make them say that if they swam so far, they would have gotten tired and drowned. But regardless, why they would change it is very interesting nonetheless. And it makes you then question like, why though? And again, that's the whole cover up thing and everything like that. But as far as I'm aware, no one government wise was involved in this situation, at least like on the surface. But who knows? Maybe under the surface, and obviously just keeping it quiet and trying to not scare off the locals or any tourist activities or anything like that with it. But yes, that's the general basis of the Pensacola sea monster. I truly believe that they, unfortunately, were the victims of a sea monster attack. Now, how often does that happen? Who knows? But you don't really hear about the stories of people surviving, or about people who don't survive the attack. So there could be more people who have fallen victim to these things, and how would anyone know if they're not if they're not around to tell the story? But I truly do believe that they were victims of a sea monster of some sort, and why he decided to go to town on these boys as they were swimming there, probably just easy meals. Because a lot of times during storms, fish might, if some fish are not prepared for it or something along those lines, can get really distorted from the storm and be easy prey for predators. And this thing had probably thought the same thing. it just it's just unfortunate that it took out all these boys, and then luckily for the one person, he was the only one that was spared. But wrong place, the wrong time kind of thing, that they had to be swimming after during a storm, and next thing you know, they're all unfortunately victim to this creature. But an interesting story nonetheless, and it just shows one of those things of that obviously they shouldn't have gone out there at that time of day. And here's a little helpful advice for you: if you live near a beach, do not go swimming before or just before yeah, before or after the sun comes up, because if that's a lot of times when the tide is at its highest, that there are more fish up in the shallows, which there might be sharks. And definitely don't wear any sort of silverware, jewelry, or anything shiny reflecting fish scales, and you might provoke yourself a shark attack. So that is your helpful tip of the day. So yeah, so overall, very interesting story. I've always thought the story of the Pensacola sea monster was very riveting, and unfortunate that it happened to that. Like, I would love to meet this person, and obviously hopefully not to do like PTSD with it, but just get his side of the story and just see how he's doing. But very interesting nonetheless. So yeah, so a lot of times, like briefly mentioned earlier, Norse mythology and just ancient maps of the sea adventurers have always been the ones that have always shown like these very strange creatures drawn on them. Now, some of these creatures that are on there are actually could be misidentified as modern day creatures today. One of them, which it might be a little what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe hard to believe or something along those lines, but there's one that's really triangle shaped looking creature in a way, and it looks exactly these like weird like feathers and stuff like that. But the actual look of it is very much like a halibut. The halibut are very huge, but very well sought after sport fish. It's one that it's like a flounder, one of those flat fish that has both its eyes on the same side of its head and everything. And it's very similar to how that creature looked. There's also a very old drawing, very old, of showing like this weird sea monster, like this weird sea serpent. It's like crazy looking. It's got like this little fin on the back of its head, going all the way to the back of its neck, and it's crazy. But then when you look at it today, it's the drawing of it is actually just an oarfish. An oarfish is I would honestly say is probably one of the biggest causes of sea serpents of sightings. Now, there are some oarfish that have been known to have been seen to grow to some very big sizes, but big enough to where they could crush a boat or anything like that. No, they're pretty much a harmless fish. They are a deep sea fish that comes to the surface only during certain parts of certain time, certain places, certain day, eating like plankton and small little things like that. They can't hurt a person. They're very magical. They look like dragons. They look like sea monsters. They look a sea serpent, and I think they're probably I would honestly probably one of the coolest fish in the world. just because on how they look. And I can understand if you don't know what you're looking at and you're seeing it for the first time, this shiny scale creature that looks like it has like a sail on the back of its body. I could see how you can misidentify that as a sea monster. And and honestly, it's pretty cool. That's one of those fish that I hope so that one day I can see in person. Because obviously, because it's a deep sea fish, not like a deep sea fish, but it can survive. It can survive on the surface. But so it's one of those. But it obviously, like an aquarium, or you can never have something like that in captivity. I mean, believe it or not, it's impossible to have a great white shark in captivity. People have tried it. Many people have, and some people have gone to live maybe for like a few months or so, but ultimately it just dies. No one has been able to successfully keep a great white shark being able to live in captivity, and I think the biggest problem with that is space. It needs a lot of space. It's a big shark, a lot of space and a lot of food, and obviously it can't handle living in captivity, which is unfortunate because I that's also on my bucket list too, is seeing a great white shark in person. And I'm hoping to see, like, I would honestly be one of those people that are in those little shark cages and everything. I would love to do that. That is on my bucket list to do. And when we get to that point, I'll report back in and tell my adventures of that. But obviously not anytime soon. So a lot of other interesting drawings of sea monsters from back in the day. Obviously, some of them are just these, like, okay, that's whatever kind of thing. Like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what they really saw. Is that what they really saw? And some of these creatures, like I mentioned with the oarfish and the halibut, were all misidentifications of modern day animals, or some other things that are normal to us. Could some of these actually been like real life creatures they saw? Possibly. We don't know. We weren't there. The ocean is a very deep and mysterious place, and we can't, up to a point, we can only look down for so far. But then once you go deep enough, you can't look in every single direction at once. There are probably there's so many fish and creatures down there that we probably have not even seen yet, and can't even fathom some of it. Because I've heard some crazy stories about people, diving around coral reefs, and probably that are only about maybe, I don't know, like 150 feet deep, and run into like these weird, strange, huge octopus-like creatures, or these like or like like mermaids, mer people, fish people, stuff like that. The ocean's crazy, and we've only seen a super small fraction of it. Because again, we can't look at every direction all at once. Personally, for me, something that I don't even know, I don't even think it's even physically possible. Maybe in the future when we have really well done technology, would be to have like a thermal camera for the water. So obviously, if you have a thermal camera, you look out in the woods and you see heat signatures of animals and stuff like that. But what if there was an equivalent of that for the ocean, where you put it in the ocean and you could look down, and any creature that is down there, no matter how deep it is or whatever size it is, or whatever it is, you can see the shape of it. I think that would be so cool to go down and I could look down and be like, "Whoa, look at that! I see a giant squid like 3 miles deep. That thing's huge." Like, I think the idea of that would be so freaking cool. And if that ever became available to like people, I would snatch one of those things up in a heartbeat. Like, I live by the ocean now. See ya. And I would just go. I would probably go to the West Coast. I'd probably go to Oregon. Is probably where I would live, and just start from there. Because obviously Oregon's also a great place for bigfooting and stuff like that, and all the crazy stuff that's in the woods there. But I think that's probably cool. Again, the technology is probably not even there. It may not even be there. But that's like on like my unrealistic bucket list of technology that I would love for us to have, like teleporters or like jetpacks. But humans are stupid and dangerous, so they will never ever make jetpacks like versed as they are in like movies, cartoons, and everything like that, people would abuse that very badly, and ruin the fun for everyone else. And so yeah, so some of these stories of some of these drawings, they show like these weird, strange creatures. One of them's like blowing, water out of its mouth and everything. It's like, okay, that could have been a misidentification of a whale, and it's all like it's blowing the water out its blowhole and everything like that. So so bear with me on this a little bit. I do believe that there are some stories of sea monsters, especially early on in early on adventures, even some probably till today might have some misidentifications. Again, bear with me on this for just a little bit. I do believe some of these stories of sea monsters might be misidentification of whales showing off their junk. Now, this is a thing. Whales do that. They do it for a multitude of possible different reasons. One, to show that they're ready to mate of nearby females, showing off its supremacy to other competing males, and I forget what else there was, but those were like the big ones, and just show like hey, look at me, I'm a male, I'm a male whale. You a female whale? Okay, cool. Let's get out of here, kind of thing. And the first time I heard of this idea, this thing that whales do this, it is very weird looking, I will say. And if you're going out on the ocean for the first time and you see this, you're like, huh, what is that weird like long neck creature? And oh, crackers. I do believe that some of these stories probably were just whales showing off their junk, and people obviously not knowing what they're seeing, and then come up with and then start saying these stories of like this long long neck creature came out of the water and then vanished and everything like that. So can I say that's all of them? No, but I definitely do say that I think there are. I think it is the answer to some of the misidentifications, for sure. Again, probably one of the most no, not God. I cannot think of the word for that right now. The most superstitious people in the world are sailors, but more so fishermen. They along the rivers, on different parts of the world, on all over different parts of remote rivers and lakes. They are very superstitious, and so they probably saw the same like the monster and everything like that, and it's like, no, my dude, no, that's just whale junk. Honestly, thinking if it was one of those situations where I could travel back in time and just like look at like see what people really did see, like did this really happen or are they seeing something else, and I could just be floating there, and then I just see this whale show its junk, and the people are like, oh my god, look at the sea monster. I would just be laughing my butt off, like, oh my god, you guys are getting excited over whale junk. Congratulations. So that's I believe is a possible explanation for some. Again, not all. There's a lot of things in the ocean, and there's some weird stories that I've been hearing about in the past few years that you cannot possibly explain off a lot of these stories. Just saying. Let's see. Okay, and then also this one last thing before we step away from whale junk is that when they also do this, whales can be a bit more aggressive. So there could be that could lead up to some of these stories of seeing these things or these whales that attack the ship. And like, like sea monsters destroy the ship or attacked it or something along those lines. So that could explain that some of that for sure. There's also interesting of actually let's go back a little bit. Probably one of my favorite modern day sightings. I believe this sighting within the past somewhere in the past 20 years. There was a sailboat, one of those big old like fancy sailboats out in the middle of the ocean. nice sunny day. They were all just sailing along. When all of a sudden the boat comes to like a sudden stop. It comes like jerks, and they're like, why we stop? They're like in the middle of the ocean. There's no way we ran into any like sandbar or anything on that along those lines that stopped the boat, and they're very confused. They're wondering why the ship stopped. And some, obviously, of course, some of them start looking on the sides of the boat, and then coming up from the sides of the boat are these huge tentacles that are slowly like encapsulating the boat. Now they weren't like huge, like giant kraken size, but big enough to being like, what the heck is going on? And showing, and then they're kind of going, the tentacles are kind of slowly coming up a little bit. It's just it's just because if you didn't know about squid and octopus, they like taste and can like feel things with their suckers. So they have so many of these things. So they're pretty much using just to feel around, figure out, and everything like that. There's a video I saw recently of a person who's sitting at a little tide pool, and this giant Pacific octopus, not super huge, but that same species, comes up to this person. Goes up to his feet that he has in the water, showing no sign of aggression or anything like that. It's just it's just feeling them along the line. It's just using its tentacles just to, hey, what are you? What are you doing here? Kind of thing. Just getting an idea of what he is. The person then puts his little finger in the little suction cup. It kind of like feels him a little bit. He lets go, and then the squid, the octopus, then once he's done, just seeing how things go, just swims away. So, so yeah. So after the whole incident, the creature then all of a sudden then just lets go, and the boat sails on like normal. Now, let me say that this was not one, again, not a small sailboat, but not definitely not one of those smaller sailboats you get on the ocean. This was one like the little bit of the bigger ones, not a huge one, but definitely one of the bigger ones. So the fact that this thing stopped in the middle of the ocean, stopped on a dime, must have showed that this squid or octopus that stopped this thing, more people are more or less thinking that it was a squid, stop this thing dead in its tracks, meant it was a big squid to do that. Now, how big of a squid would you need to be for it to stop a boat like dead, like a sailboat dead like that? I don't know. Squid and octopus are very strong creatures because they are all muscle. The only bone that is in a squid and octopus is the beak in the center of their I guess mouths they use to eat and crush food. That's it. That's the only bone in them. Everything else is all just a solid muscle. And so you can just imagine something that has 8 arms and just like probably like the size of the boat, at least was able to stop it like that. Really makes you wonder how strong and big this thing was. Now, could it have been the same size of the boat to keep it still? Maybe. Could it have been smaller? Maybe. Or would you need to be something much bigger than that to stop the boat like that at all? I don't know. I can't even make guesses on how big it would need to have been for it to even, stop along those lines. But it's still an interesting story nonetheless. Like, as far as where this thing didn't try attacking, or unless it was attacking it, who knows? It could have just been like, ooh, food and everything like that. Now, if this really was that big of a squid, why was it on the surface? And, why was it like all the way down there? Like a lot of squid, most squid are a deeper species fish. Now the only close thing to that, to that would be close to the surface would probably be Humboldt squid, which live on the west coast and also in the Sea of Cortez, like where the giant one was seen. And so, but most squid are more deep sea, or more of a deep sea species of fish. So why was this creature out in the middle, so close up to the surface? Like, did it see this thing from that far deep and was wondering what it was and it went to attack it? Or was it just curious? Or, like what? I don't know. But I've always, whenever I hear that story, it never comes up, I'm like, oh man, I love this story. It's very cool. And I really do like the idea that this was literally just a giant squid that stopped this boat and then let it go, and then they sailed on their way. There are also stories of people saying that they have seen in this one particular ocean, this one particular area, whenever they go there, they find like these eels, because some eels can grow pretty big. I believe the biggest species of eel is the conger eel. That thing can grow up to like 6-7 feet long, and it's a pretty hefty eel. Look up pictures of a conger eel. They're pretty fascinating. But these people have reported this one area of seeing just a a school of giant eels, the width of some trees, or at least lamp poles, or not the telephone poles. Like, even conger eels don't get that big, and yet these people are telling the story about this one area where they are seeing eels that are like the thickness of a person, and they're huge, and they're long. They're like 20, 30, 40 feet long, and it's like, my God, like long fin eels are a freshwater species of eel that are pretty ravenous. They're not really necessarily aggressive, but they definitely are not scared of people. And so, they're kind of like a version of piranhas, that there's like a dead animal, like an opening of a corpse. These things will just dive right in. So eels are definitely nothing to be to scoff at. Like, eels are not obviously not like a super duper dangerous animal, but definitely something you don't want to like take lightly. And so just imagine a creature that is this big, like that are this big, and if a person fell into the water or anything like that, you'd be eel food in a matter of seconds. So it's always very interesting, when people tell these stories of like these giant creatures that are like bigger than normal, or creatures that like what they're seeing makes no logical sense. Like, oh my God, this giant eye looked at me and then went down, which maybe it might have been a giant squid. Giant squid have they believe the largest eye in the world, like the size of like dinner plates. That's a big eye. And so I don't know, it's just so fascinating. Like, sea monsters are like one of the, or again, are like the stories as old as time, and just one of the most just one of the most stories that people, now sure, are there some of these stories that people probably fabricate them or lie and stuff like that? Yeah, sure. People do that for things all the time. But a lot of these people are seeing things that are defy logic, or have no reason to lie. Like, a lot of these stories that I've been hearing about are like, that's crazy. Like living dinosaurs, and giant eels, Nessie like monsters, giant squid, giant octopus, giant sharks, and just sea serpents in general. And so I personally believe there are more to these stories than meets the eye. Are a lot of these misidentifications? Probably. Does that mean people are lying about them? No, but without really knowing what they're looking at, they may think of one thing, but it actually is another. But I believe sea monsters, sea serpents are real. The ocean is too big and too vast, and so much of it is unexplored that like there is so much more down there than we can possibly imagine. Can possibly imagine. And so I like to think that sea monsters do exist, and what exactly they are, or what else is there down there that we haven't seen yet, only time will tell. And I really do hope that we get some solid proof of it, because there's obviously a lot of these videos every so often of seeing like this weird creature in like the water or anything like that, but nothing like so many things, nothing concrete yet. Come on, science, start working on this thermal camera for the ocean, or something equivalent to that. Get to it, chop chop. And I think that's it. I think that's all the points I wanted to cover today. Been old pictures and everything like that. So yeah, if you ever wanted to, see that for yourself, look up, the old sea maps, and look at some of the creatures that are on these things, and see if you can be like, okay, I could see that they misidentified it for that animal. I was like, oh, okay, that's clearly just an oarfish, or something along those lines. And, look up an oarfish too. Excuse me, oarfish are, again, are the coolest looking animal I think in the world, and I think is the prime suspect of a lot of sea serpent stories. Especially old in the days, before humans came along and started polluting the ocean, everything like that. There could have been oarfish that were 30, 40, 50 feet long, maybe even bigger. Maybe there are still down there, because there hasn't been many big ones seen alive. Only a few, maybe been like maybe 10, 20 feet, but none have any bigger than that have been seen alive. There's one picture of these people holding like a very long corpse of one, like huge, but that was one they found washed up on the beach. But nothing has been seen alive yet. So who knows how big oarfish really do get down there? And so yeah, we'll look that up and tell me what you think. And yeah, I think that will be it. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I've always loved talking about sea monsters and sea serpents and stuff like that because it's always just so it's just so much fun because we just don't know. We don't know what's in the ocean really. Are all these stories of people saying of these weird creatures real, or are they just misidentifications, or is there more to it than just that? I believe there's probably some stories of some of these things that people haven't even seen yet, and I really do hope we do see more of these things. We get some more evidence of them someday in the future. But again, hope everyone enjoyed. For all the people at the festival who are listening to this episode now, welcome and thank you for joining the Cryptid Club. Ooh, I kind of like that a little bit. I'll have to work with the call my listeners and stuff like that. It could just be simple, just listeners, but the Cryptid Club. Where is my notebook? Notebook. So something else I also like to do if you're just watching this now, you're kind of still even watching these. Cryptid Club. Sometimes I have my little notebook. I have a little notebook here that I write down all my notes for the episodes and everything. And sometimes during the episodes, I come up with ideas and I have to quickly write them down because there's been some ideas I've had that I didn't have the book on me, and I've forgotten some of the details of things I want to talk about, which is kind of unfortunate. But thankfully, I have a lot of times some of these ideas pop up while I'm recording, and I just plop them into the book right there. Oh yeah, so if you are from the festival, welcome. If you're not from the festival and you're a new listener in another way, welcome as well. So I hope if you haven't already, like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cryptid Talk. Follow the YouTube page. Search Cryptid Talk on YouTube. And I also have an email, cryptidtalk91@aol.com. If you've seen something or know someone that has, send them my way. I would love to hear the stories. I'm hoping that someday, once we get enough people to email to send some stories in, we will be able to, have some episodes maybe just dedicated to just reading people's stories and talking about them and stuff like that. And so I think it would be pretty cool. Slowly working on getting some guests. There's still one guest that he said he wanted to be the very first guest of the show. I've been having a tough time getting in contact with him, but hopefully I'll be able to get a hold of him soon enough. Because then once I can start have him, I got one guest said he'd be interested, and some other guests of people that I personally know who I think would be more than happy to be a guest on the show. And yeah, that's it. I hope everyone had a good week, and hooray, it's Friday. By the day that this comes out, I'm gonna be eating dumplings tonight at a new restaurant, so that's gonna be a lot of fun there. And everyone, I hope everyone has a good, safe weekend. And remember, keep your eyes and ears open for the creepiness in store, because you never know what you'll find outside of your door. This has been Cryptid Talk with Michael Madden. Have a good day, everyone. Stay safe.